The CIA, unlike God, works in many ways as blunders to perform. Now and then there are, some would say, wonders. They're at it again on college campuses. You may recall way back CIA recruited students, and there were protests back in the 60s. And then came another period post-Vietnam War when it was fully accepted. Students were quiet. Well, at Northwestern University, as you know, which has a reputation, they're a rather conservative school. There was a protest by students at CIA recruiting on the campus with the compliance of the administration. And some of the students protested, and we'll speak of the nature of their protest, and they were arrested. They were acquitted of violating university procedure by a university committee of students and faculty, but they're on trial at the circuit court of Skokie for trespassing and disorderly conduct and etc.
We have
disorderly conduct.
And two of the students here with us are Colin Seals, who's a senior English major from San Antonio.
Yep.
And Amy Mills, who's from Miami, majoring in
radio, television,
radio, something we call communications. But with him is Verne Lyon. Now, Verne Lyon has been through this 24 years ago. He was a CIA agent. Verne, we'll begin with you. Does this sound familiar, the story you're hearing right here? You became a CIA agent back in 64 or so?
1965.
Why did you start in the beginning?
Well, we have to go back 24 years to when the country was getting involved in the war in Vietnam. And everybody returning to school my senior year was interested in whether or not they were going to get a draft deferment, not so much in their job offers. And we were all looking for a way to be patriotic as well as to keep ourselves from going to Vietnam. And the CIA offered me a way out. They asked me to become their eyes and ears on the Iowa State campus in exchange for $300 a month in an envelope and a guaranteed draft deferment and a future with the agency.
What do they mean by become the eyes and ears on the campus?
The director of the FBI at the time, J. Edgar Hoover, had tried to convince President Johnson that all student protests against the war going on in the United States were being manipulated, funded, and controlled by foreign interests. And if you want to read Moscow into that, you can. But President Johnson was wise enough not to believe everything Mr. Hoover said. So he authorized the largest covert action ever undertaken against U.S. citizens. Eventually it was named Operation Chaos, but it was to be carried out by the CIA, and it was to determine the veracity of the FBI investigation.
So it's called Operation Chaos.
Yes.
Now, eyes and ears meaning to spy on the students.
Yes, I was a snitch, if we want to use that word, on my fellow students.
What? Just to detect that they were doing what?
Well, whenever there was a protest against the U.S. Government's deepening involvement in Vietnam, I was to attend the protest if possible, get a copy of any attendance list that was passed around, any flyers or pamphlets or posters that they produced. I would also volunteer to man the student activities office when nobody else was there. And sitting next to the Xerox machine, I could Xerox copies of donors lists, mailing lists, this kind of thing.
Did any of the CIA agents, I'm curious, not in your case, did any actually become provocateurs too?
No, that was, we were asked not to do that.
Not to do that. That was left to the FBI.
Yes, they were more bungling.
But so we're going to hear, as you came here now because you know about Amy and Colin and their colleagues. How many of you, by the way, were arrested?
16.
16.
13 of whom were students.
Well, 13 students, and all were acquitted by the... Set that up. I want to come back to Verne a minute, whether Verne sees a relation, an analogy between then and now.
Well, the university pressed charges within the university system, and outside of the university system is pressing charges with the state against all 16 of us. Okay, so there are 13 students who are facing charges just within the university system, which weren't criminal charges, but academic charges.
Disciplinary.
Yeah.
What?
Just disciplinary charges.
Yeah. And you were acquitted of that?
Yes.
By the university
Yes.
committee of what? Of faculty and students?
8 faculty and students.
Yeah. So let me get this. The university acquitted you of violating university procedure, but of plaintiffs on violating city. It's kind of schizophrenic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, but we feel like that they didn't bring up strong witnesses that they had during the university hearings because they wanted to save that for the trial that's coming up on
What
Monday.
is it you did?
Protested.
Yeah, we were basically there to protest CIA recruitment, and it became the biggest protest that we've had in a period of at least 5 or 6 years. 150 people at the peak of the protest, which was around 1. And at 2 o'clock, the Department of Public Safety told us that our permit had run out to be on the street protesting, a permit that other groups haven't had to have in the past, and started arresting people. And those people were being very brutally arrested. I remember turning around and seeing...
One Frank McElveen I saw being dragged by the hair and but pulled
What
back
did you
with the
guys
hair.
do
Yeah,
to provoke them?
nothing.
You were holding up signs
Literally
and
nothing.
saying things.
Literally nothing. We feel that it was their plan to
Well,
arrest us at 2
Yeah,
o'clock.
there was an antagonism on their part.
When you were protesting what was considered the right of the CIA to recruit students on the campus.
We were protesting the fact that the CIA was complicit in helping the organization to grow, to continue its
the
activities.
Northwestern. Was,
You mean Northwestern University?
Yeah,
is
Northwestern
complicit.
University.
Now, Verne, does this ring a bell with you?
Yes, only back in the mid-'60s when I was a student, the protests weren't against the CIA because people didn't really know what the function was. The protests were against the war in Vietnam and against Army, ROTC, Navy, and Air Force. And, of course, in those days, the CIA did not come to campus recruiting with posters and through the placement office. They would do it in a more clandestine method called the Old Boy Network.
Now we come to something interesting. Now, the change in 24 years. Then it was done surreptitiously,
Yes,
as though through the back door,
Yes.
the recruiting. Today it's done openly, unashamedly.
Yeah.
How do you explain that? Is that change? You're 20,
21.
21, Amy Hill's 21, and Colin Seals is
22.
22. Do you represent, that's a big question coming up. Do you feel, we've heard so much about student apathy and indifference and career-minded. Do you represent a very small minority, or do you represent something you think might be popping again? And you got to give me the truth.
I think it's something that is definitely coming up. I see with so many issues starting to rear their heads and around campuses with this week with the Supreme Court hearing the Missouri, is it Missouri? Right,
Yeah,
that's
Roe
the case.
versus Wade.
And might
You mean the
conceivably
abortion
overturn
pro-choice or
Roe versus
pro-other.
Wade. I
Yeah.
think that pulled a lot of people out of apathy, and also at Northwestern there's also a strong animal rights movement, and our CIA off campus, which has been going for
So you see
years
all
and
the
years.
issues kind of connected in a sense.
And I'd also like to say that I think, that the student movement has been going on for a while. It's not as though divestment didn't happen at a lot of universities across the country. I think that media attention...
When you say divestment, you mean divestment of investments in South Africa?
Right, divestment
Right.
from
Did
South
that
Africa.
draw, how was that as far as...
That was a very effective
Demonstrations.
movement in the student population. In fact,
Yeah.
a lot of the whole UC system, University of California, divested.
See, we
because
have
of
to
that.
come back now to Verne. So now there's a direct joining of issues because the CIA has come unashamedly onto campus now to recruit, whereas in the past it did it secretly. That tells us something. Well, the obvious question listeners will ask is, do we have to take a break now, I wonder? Pretty soon. Let's ask why you quit the CIA.
yes.
Why? And then we'll come back to the students.
Well, there was no one single reason. It was just the reasons build up over a period of time. And basically, I could divide it into two things. One, the mission directives I was being given and asked to do were not in the best interests of the national security interests of this country, nor were they in my own interests or that of those of anybody I knew. Plus the fact I'd gotten married while I was in Cuba, and this was a no-no. I hadn't allowed the agency time to check out the bona fides and background of my wife, and I was ordered to get a divorce, and that was kind of the straw.
How
that
did you
broke
get
it
a
up.
divorce?
Yeah. So all of those things.
Were you in Cuba for the CIA?
Yes.
Oh.
They just all combined, and one day I woke up and I couldn't carry out their orders any longer.
And what they want you to do in Cuba?
Well, I was there. I eventually became chief of base there, and that was to reactivate agents who had been dormant for a number of years, our assets there, and create new ones. And in general, to raise the frustration level of the average Cuban citizen.
And by the way, it's interesting. You were a member of the group called what's the group called? Ex-CIA.
The Association of National Security
you know
Alumni.
John Stockwell.
Yes.
And a number of guys.
Yes.
And Phil Redinger, different guys.
Yeah, we decided instead of wandering around on our own out there, that we would get together and form an association where there's strength in numbers. And all of these people you mentioned are colleagues of
Ralph
mine.
McGehee and those guys.
Ralph McGehee and Phil Agee. And
Yeah, you know all those guys.
Oh,
So
yeah.
there is a growing number of ex-CIA guys.
In fact, we have, believe it or not, a list of over 20 major individuals waiting to join the association who are well-known former intelligence officers. And we have been told that our association is probably the most single important association to come out in the open since.
I know that when one of you guys testifies at a trial involving something like the students here or a nun and others sitting down somewhere in front of some missile plant, testimony in court is overwhelming, if allowed
Yes.
by the judge, overwhelming as far as jury is concerned. 'Cause
My testimony
You were
was-
there. Were you testifying? In?
I testified once for students at the University of Iowa who faced similar charges, but on trespassing. And after the judge heard my testimony, he stopped the trial and dismissed the charge.
Now, will you be testifying on the trial, say, of Amy and Colin and their
No,
colleagues?
I will not.
No. Will there? Is there? You don't know idea who the judge will be or what? You're there.
Not yet.
No idea.
Yeah.
We're not supposed to talk about it either.
What's that?
We're not supposed to talk about it.
No, and we're not supposed to talk about the trial, so we won't. We're going to talk about you being charged with violating. We'll pause for a moment. You being charged with violating the right of free speech and free expression on behalf of the CIA and the administration, which is rather interesting because there was a letter written by someone on the Northwestern student paper I found rather fascinating, dealing with that very theme. Is it a right or a privilege? We'll come to that. Talking with my three guests, Verne Lyon is an ex-CIA agent who was recruited on the campus of Iowa State. You're from Des Moines?
Yes.
So, Iowa State 24 years ago. And Amy Hill, senior at Northwestern, and Colin Seals, senior Northwestern. You're not in business administration. That's interesting. Or engineering. That's interesting, too. Do you have any business administration colleagues with you? I'm just curious. Anybody from BA school or engineering
No,
school?
No, not
there was
at all.
one.
Oh, boy.
One of the arrestees was a computer science graduate student. That's about as technical.
But in
as
any
we got.
event, we come to you guys, and it's funny that there's something poetic about this in a cockeyed way. You know, Verne recruited on the campus 20, and surreptitiously they came on little cat feet, Sandberg would say. They came on little cat feet. Now they come with the tread of a big, heavy plug horse. And they come out of unashamed. That's the big thing. Now, how do you answer the charge that you were violating their right of free expression?
Well, it wasn't. I can't see that we were violating their right of free expression, since it's a privilege to recruit on campus. It's something that they're invited to do. If it was a speech, a debate, something along that nature, I can see how it can be construed as a violation of their right of free speech. But you know, the fact remains that they did see the people that were signed up to interview them. We didn't disrupt them in any way. We demonstrated. We expressed our distaste. We might have liked to stop them, but we really didn't. We didn't prevent them in any way, so it wasn't a violation of First Amendment at all.
You want to say something, Amy?
Yeah, we're in the business supposedly at the university of trying to find out what is true in the world. In fact, our university logo is whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest. And
Whatsoever things are just.
whatsoever
too,
things are just, right?
yeah.
And we sort of hold the opinion that the Central Intelligence Agency is in the business of deception. And as Verne was pointing out earlier, the CIA isn't there to tell the truth about what they do at the agency. The Placement Center doesn't offer books by Stockwell or Agee on what the CIA has actually done, case histories of what the CIA has done. And I think that the problem at the university is that most students aren't familiar with the activities of the agency and see it as being something that's controversial, at worst. So we're trying to say...
you guys are serious then about a university. You guys are really serious. But you're a place where you learn.
Right, yeah, surprise,
Absolutely.
surprise.
I get it.
It's not a
They're serious
stopping
about
place to
it.
a
I
job.
see. The reason I raised that question about the violent right of free speech, which is a joke, of course, is that Andy Norman wrote a very interesting letter that was published in the student newspaper, Daily Northwestern. The issue isn't free speech. How can, it says, it's claimed that these protesters are insensitive to civil rights. How else could they advocate a policy that would deny the CIA its constitutional right to free speech? And writes Andy Norman, this argument misses the point entirely. First of all, recruitment is not speech. Secondly, providing the CIA university resources for conducting interviews is not the observance of a right, but the granting of a privilege. And that's what we're
Precisely.
talking about.
Mm-hmm.
In other
We
words,
agree.
if a large military outfit came along, let's say we call it euphemistic defense outfit, the outfits came along, and want to recruit, that is a privilege granted, not a right. That's what you're protesting.
Yeah, and the Bill of Rights is actually designed to protect individuals in a society from the powers of the government, not the powers of the government from individuals in society. So we think it's ironic that people are bringing up this argument, the constitutionality of what we're doing.
Yeah. How does this sound to you, Verne? This has familiar ring to it?
Yeah, I've heard this argument many times, and students at different campuses I've been to have raised the issue. It is a privilege, and would the placement office allow, for example, the Ku Klux Klan or the Nazi Party or somebody like this to come to campus and recruit? And of course, the university would say no, but the CIA is a legitimate government agency, an entity. Therefore, it must be allowed to recruit on campus. But then the problem comes down to legitimacy, and the CIA cannot claim freedom of speech or First Amendment because it is not on the campus to tell the truth. It cannot, as a matter of fact. So,
See, it cannot tell the truth.
well, it cannot because most people would be turned away.
Oh, in that sense. And also, I guess the excuse that there's also national security always involved in matters of that
And
sort.
I can give you an example.
Yeah.
Just recently, I was at Trinity College in Massachusetts the day before the CIA was recruiting, and they had 22 students who had signed up to interview. And after my speech that evening, 20 of them canceled their interviews. So I'm not making a lot of friends in Washington these days.
That's very funny. Of course, this conversation here is taking place during the trial of Ollie North, isn't it? We've been talking about truth
Yeah.
and honesty and honor and everything else that goes along with it. I was thinking you're being... my guests are here under the auspices of the Chicago Committee to Defend the Bill of Rights, which has a good track record. Little dough, but a good track record. And there's a gathering tonight about an hour and a half from now. Let's see, this is about, we're close 60. Yeah, it's, what time is it? Right away, in about an hour. Grab a quick bite. It's 7:30. My three guests, you'll be there, won't you?
Yeah,
You'll
we'll
all
all
be
be
there.
there.
And I know Verne is going to be one of the featured speakers there. There'll be songs. It's it's called the NU Students Protesting CIA Recruiting, and it's at the First Baptist Church in Evanston, 7:30. We got about an hour. That's tonight at 7:30. The First Baptist Church, Evanston. That's on the corner of Lake Street and Chicago Avenue in Evanston. It should be a very lively and obviously a very enlightening one, thanks to Verne Lyon here. And some of the students will be there. So one last go-round, perhaps. When does your trial come up? At least we can talk about
Monday, May 1st.
Oh, Monday is the trial in Skokie
Yeah.
Circuit Court. And the charge is the university is the plaintiff.
The university and also the state is pressing charges for people who were arrested
And that's
outside.
trespassing and disturbance of the peace, whatever, right? Is that
Disorderly conduct, resisting
it?
arrest.
Disorderly conduct.
Yeah.
So that's
All that
it.
stuff.
And you're saying you heard that before, Verne.
Yeah, and the courts usually on those cases say that to argue the national security policies of the United States government in a simple misdemeanor trespassing case is not legitimate, and they try to stop people like myself from testifying.
What have you found? We still have a couple minutes or so. What have you found? You've been traveling around the country. You've been hitting campuses too. Have you found people like Amy and Colin there increasing? I know they're a minority. I'm aware of that.
Well, it depends on where you're at. If you were at the University of California, Santa Barbara last year, the entire student body was against the CIA, and we've got a program that just started about officer and residence. The CIA was actually placing career agents on university faculties to teach and recruit, and we've gotten them kicked off of that campus. There was a massive demonstration at the University of Iowa last fall. So I see a resurgence. The university
You do
student
see
today
that.
is much more informed about what the agency does. And I don't think they're as blind as they were 24 years ago when I didn't even know who they were.
Yeah. What about you, Amy, and Colin? What was your thoughts before we remind the audience again of where the gathering is an hour from now?
Yeah. It's at a First Baptist Church in Evanston, Illinois. 7th.
No, I mean about you and your friend. Do you sense? Do you have allies? How big? I mean, you got 5 people here in the studio. That's you know, Gideon's army. You had very few, but their hearts were pure.
I think I've seen now 4 years of demonstrations against the CIA, and usually they've never gotten over 30 or 40 people. So 150 people at the last demonstration was just, warmed my heart, and I felt like all the work that we'd been doing in the past was paying off. I think that the important thing with this issue is not to get confused about the right of the CIA, the right of the students. If people would just look into what the CIA does and inform themselves, and that's, to make this democracy more functioning.
How did you come to think as you do?
I guess I've always sort of been raised in a liberal family, and when I started reading books on Nicaragua, I really started getting interested in what covert activity was and started to disagree.
You're Miami. You folks Miami.
Yeah.
Colin Seal, San Antonio. How'd you come to think as you do?
I wasn't as well informed as Amy. At the time of my arrest, I had protested the past 4 years CIA recruitment on rather more vague notions of what this country is supposed to be doing in the world. And but recently, in the past 9 months to a year, it's been books mainly. I can't claim as much practical experience as Amy.
Books and
traveling.
And eyes opened.
Yeah.
Well, Verne, our ex-CIA friend Verne Lyon, any thought comes to your mind before we say goodbye?
Just that the American public should take a very close look at the CIA, its present charter, and that of the FBI. And in fact, they should pressure Congress for new charters that have very explicit limits and placed in them, and the elimination of covert activity by the CIA. That's totally unnecessary.
Thank you. And to remind the audience, in about an hour from now, at 7:30 at the First Baptist Church in Evanston, that's in the corner of Lake and Chicago Avenue, auspices of the Chicago Committee to Defend the Bill of Rights. Verne Lyon will be there. Our friend will be talking about his experiences and thoughts today, as well as our student friends, and Kristen Lems will be singing songs, and Becky Lipschutz will be doing all sorts of illustrations, painting. She does drawings on the spot of circumstance. Anyway, it should be a good event, and thank you very much, all three of you. Very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.